there was no class on January 27 because of the snowy day. So I do not have a medical class. Instead, I'd like to a little bit catch up today and next week, the Tuesday class, because the chapter 2 is not very difficult. So it's still the introduction of the operating system, focusing on the operating system structure. Okay, so we already discussed a lot about the introduction of the operating system. That includes the computer architecture as well as operating system itself. So I don't think it's a big problem to catch up today and next week class. Okay, so however, one of the pins, this serial pin has a problem. So I think that because of that, here the blue, I'm going to ask the media service to replace the keyboard. Also, why don't you pick up one of the handout? Okay, we'll be discussing during the classroom. Okay, so last week actually we have talked about what is the computer architecture. So pretty much it's kind of the reminding the classes what is a computer and how computer is organized, and also what is the operating system. Pretty much today you have the idea about what is the operating system, what is the computer system. So what is the operating system? It's a kind of interface between computer and user. Okay? So without the operating system, you cannot utilize the computer resource. Okay? So using that operating system, we can get the benefit of the high fast the processing of the CPU processor. Also, we can run any application program. Also, we can order the computer to process something. So that is the purpose. Then pretty much based on that definition, we will actually design such an operating system. That is the main part of today's lecture. Okay, so in terms of service, how the operating system is organized. So we define the operating system itself is a group of software. That means that each software should support something service. So we are going to discuss about what kind of service we can put in the operating system. So first one is definitely is the user interface, right? So when we turn on the computer, first thing is sometimes you can see fancy nice like that. Sometimes just the command line interface. All of them are interface. Using that, the program is also a program. Everything in your operating system is a software, it's a program. So interface is also the program. So using that program, you can discuss, you can talk, you can communicate with your computer, the system. So the first thing you need to implement in your operating system is the user interface service. Okay? Sometimes it's called the UI, so everybody understands what is a UI. There are two main types of the user interface. First one is the graphical user interface. Everybody knows, everybody prefer to use such a graphical user interface, such as Windows desktop, okay? Or when you turn on the MacBook, so you can see the interface is a little different from the Windows operating system. Also, what about the iPhone or the Android phone? It has the interface, right? So graphical user interface, mostly graphical user interface. You can just browse your file and information stored in your computer by clicking, or sometimes typing, the swiping. You can access such an information file. Okay, that is the graphical user interface. Also, there exists command line interface. Command line interface is, have you ever used the MS-DOS? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Some of them, yes. A couple of years ago, most of the students have used those operating system, but nowadays half of the students never used such a DOS operating system. What about the CLI, command line interface? Have you ever typed a CLI? in your CLI. Where is it? Right. This one. Not CLI, CMD. So this is the command line interface, right? This is not DOS, this is not an operating system, this is just an interface to use. Even you can type Notepad, then Notepad will be garnished, okay? This is another way to utilize the computer resource, that is a command line interface, which means you can type the command and that command will be executed, okay? That is a command line. So also, if you are using the Linux or the Unix system, you can see a lot of command line interfaces like that, which is called a terminal. So for example, little bit in my laptop, I have at least 8 different operating systems using what? The virtual machine. So where's my VM player? So using the VM player, so for example, I'm going to double-click one of that. So nowadays, it's not very difficult to use the multiple operating system. So this is another type of interface. It's a command line interface, but it's different from the CMD command, the CMD command in the Windows. This is the called shell interface. So we are going to see what is a shell a little bit about the later. Okay, shell means it's a shell. It's outside. So if you understand the architecture of operating system, then you will realize why this program, the shell program, is called shell. Okay, so if you want to see what kind of shell has a different types of shell, like you can type this one, then you can see this is using the Bourne shell, BASH program, shell program. So we will see details about them throughout today's lecture. Okay. So that is the main part, main service of the operating system. That is the user interface. The next one is, can you remember that the last time? So we have talked about a lot what is a process, right? What is a process? Actually, process is almost everything of the operating system, the computer system. If you want to use the computer resource, you need to learn, you need to use the process. Process is a series of instructions loaded into the memory. Why memory? Because eventually we'd like to use the CPU, processor resource. Processor can process what? Instruction. But not from the hard disk drive, but it will get such an instruction from the memory. Okay? So that is the reason the program should be loaded into the memory. That loaded memory, the loaded instruction is called a process. So operating system should be able to execute the process and also control that process. Only one process? No. There are a lot of processes are running on the operating system. So you need to manage. You have very limited, you will realize later that if we have unlimited computer resource, like unlimited CPU power, unlimited memory, unlimited the computer resource, actually we don't have to learn the operating system. We don't need the operating system, right? Such a complicated algorithm. Whenever we need a resource, we can assign because we have unlimited. However, unfortunately, we have the very limited computer resource power, such as the CPU, and even though you are using the quad core, that's only at a certain time you can run the 4 thread only. Okay? And also the memory is very limited, so we need to in and out replace every time. That is called the memory, the page replacement that we are going to discuss later. So your operating system, our operating system, should be able to execute such a program and also manage such a program as a process. Okay, that is the reason. From the next week, we will learn the process management probably 5 or 6 weeks. So until the midterm is. Okay, then this program, this process require input and output. As we have seen the computer architecture, half of them are I/O interface connected to your computer through the bus. Okay, data bus, control bus, and the address bus. Using this bus as so operating system definitely need to manage such a input and output. Okay, and in addition to such an interface, the program execution and I/O management, there are more. The services that should be implemented in operating system that include the file system manipulation. So where can you manage, store, and manage the information in operating system? It will be file always. So how many files? So many files. So we need the software. As a part of the operating system, we need the software that is called the file system. So operating system should include such a the software that can manipulate the file system. Then suppose that we have the multiple processes. So they should be sometimes they are independent. Some of them are independent, but at least each process should have their parent process. We are going to learn such a mechanism of the process creation. So, but simply, this is a kernel process. It's just created the first time. Okay, the first process, and this process will create several children processes, child process. Their parent is this one. You can number like the 2, 3, 4. The parent process of the process 2 is process 1. So they need to communicate. Okay? For example, if this process is here, really killed? No. It's the terminated. And automatically the other process will be terminated, something like that. How can we do that? Because they can communicate each other. Okay. Also, you need to inform some of the information to the parents, the process. So also sometimes you need to work with other children process. Like for example, I'd like to create several threads. If you do not understand what is a thread, I think that's a problem. You should understand what is a thread in your programming language class, especially in the Java. So without understanding the thread, doesn't make sense to understand Java programming. But anyway, we will cover what is a thread later. So if you create the several threads of the process, so they need to communicate each other. Okay? You need to control each thread. So definitely, operating system should be able to communicate among processes. Actually, that is the main purpose of your warming up project. In your warming up project, you should be able to create main process and 2 more children processes. Then they should be communicating each other. That's it. Because that is the main part of the operating system. So using program language, you can use any program language, but I know sometimes because of the very high level program language, the environment, you cannot realize such a basic the mechanism of the operating system service. So I'm going to explain the details about the warming up project next week or week after we cover the process part. Okay, so operating system provide a service for the communication. Especially it's called the inter-process communication, or in short IPC, inter-process communication. There are several methods in inter-process communication. Sometimes you can probably you are familiar with the client-server communication, which is program. Socket is like this one, right? So you can implement client and server side. Is it difficult? No. It requires just 5 to 6 lines of the code. You can actually implement a web server or something file transfer FTP server. It's all of that. As long as it's based on the TCP/IP, so they are based on the socket program. Or you can use the other inter-process communication method. So you can use the message queue, or you can use the semaphore. So we will see such an example of the communication method later. However, in your warming up the project, you can select one of these. But I believe most of the students will use the socket method for the communication. Okay? One of the easiest ways. Also, there is no perfect operating system. It doesn't make sense. Sometimes intentionally we create the error, okay, in our algorithm or operating system. So operating system should be able to detect and sometimes ignore such an error. Most of the time, actually ignore operating system. Why operating system ignores such an error? Because it's expensive, costly, which means it requires a lot of computer resource. If the operating system detect all the error, if operating system should take care of all the error or the recover, it takes a long time to handle, to manage such an error case. So instead, the operating system just ignore such an error or just inform to end user. So end user will be responsible for such an error or exceptional case. And this is the reason you will receive a lot of the error message, or from time to time you need to enter or the terminate, Control C, right? Because operating system can manage such a thing, however, it's costly. That is the reason the application end user is in charge of such a error detection or sometimes the manipulating the error. But still, operating system itself provides such a functionality. Also, as we had discussed the last week, it's the second week? Oh yes, last week. So according to the definition of the operating system, it coordinate and allocate the resource and coordinate and allocate the resource and control them, right? So resource allocation. So you can specify that this process will take the maximum 50% of the CPU, the resource, and 30% of the net bandwidth and something like that. So you can actually allocate the specific resource. And also you can keep track of how much resource each process is using and has been used. Okay? So that is called accounting. So nowadays, this resource allocation and accounting are very important. Why? Why do you need to keep track of each process and how much resources are used and has been used? Why is it very important?
So you are like more doing networking a lot and cloud computing.
Networking, yes. It's a cloud computing. What is a cloud computing? It's a cloud. Vague. So cloud means it's not steady, right? It's not like this one. This one is steady. It's my CPU power is changing, or the hard disk drive capacity of my hard disk drive is changing. No, it's steady. So I can use my computer resources. However, it's expensive. Also, what if I need to run the very heavy application? I need to purchase the new laptop, or I need to add. It's not easy to upgrade the computer resource. Instead, why don't you log in? For example, Amazon. Amazon Web Services. Anyone who ever used Amazon Web Services? No? Only used for watching TV? Amazon? So if you have already have the Amazon account, I think so you can use the Amazon Web Service. This is a cloud computing, which means you can create your own computing resource. Just a simple click. So I need, for example, the cluster computing. Cluster is high performance computing. Cluster computing with a 10 node. Then you can just type I need a 10 node with the Windows 8 or the Linux system or even the big data Hadoop system. As long as the Amazon support, you can create it and is it free? So you have the 10 node cluster system. So it's you are very happy. You have the within 1 minute, you have such a very high performance computing. Is it free? Actually not. You need to pay. Pay by what? At that time, such a resource allocation and accounting information will be used. So for example, if you download the file, create the file system 10 GB and running CPU the certain amount of the CPU time and also the memory, and this service will be charged based on your usage. So how Amazon knows such a usage? So accounting information. So nowadays such accounting information is very important. Okay. And also to allocate, they have the millions of the nodes in their server. No, actually they have the one big server, but allocate the resource to the user by requesting and using what? Using virtual machine technology. Okay. Then also nowadays the protection and security are very, very important. So for example, several, I think the weeks ago, the Sony has been hacked many times. So if we are using the PS3 or PS4, so you are not very happy because sometimes their PlayStation, the community has been stopped several weeks sometimes, right? Because many people want to use for free for that system. I don't know, but also recently the Sony has been hacked by I don't know who hacked that, but Obama said North Korea hacked that one. And so because of such the recent, even the security of the operating system, even though that is considered sometimes to narrow down the problem as a network security, but it's not only for the network security, it's the operating system security. But that's another big story. So we are not going to cover such a protection and security details. Very roughly, we will cover the idea of the security and protection in operating system. Yes?
Is hacking really true?
I don't know. How do I know? I'm not from North Korea. I'm from South Korea. But even South Korea, it's true. Every year, some of the banks in Korea is hacked by some people. But whenever that happens, Korean government announces it's hacked by North Korea because it's easy to blame. But I don't know. I'm not sure whether North Korea has such a capability.
I read news sometime back that big companies they actually put some engineers on their own network.
Oh yeah.
So they sort of like.
Then they actually increase the crisis and make the business. Yeah, that's maybe possible, but I'm not sure. Okay. Also, anyway, so if I know who did, I don't know. Okay, so this is overview of the operating system service. In terms of service, we can see one is the operating system. So it has, as you can see, program execution. We'll be discussing in the chapter 3 and 4 regarding to the process management, and I/O operation will be discussing in the third part. Okay, the probably end of the semester, and we have the file system is also in the I/O management, and the communication. It's part of the operating system, but we are not going to discuss details in this class because probably you can learn the communication part in the 547 or 571. What's the course name? The distributed network or some other network course. So that is your 572. So that's your another core courses. So probably you will learn more in the communication in the class. Okay, but when we are saying the communication in the as a service of the operating system is mainly that we discuss in this class as a inter-process communication. Okay, how each process of the several processes are communicating with each other, and also we have the resource allocation and the accounting, and on top of that, I'm not sure whether you remember the operating system should provide their own API. Okay, just like the Java API or the something other API, so you don't have to learn all the detail. Whenever you need, you can find such an API function as a API application programming phase. Similarly, the operating system provide similar thing function. It's a system call, system function is a system API. Okay, like the handout. Okay, usually 150 to the 200 something. The system function, using that system function, application can access the computer resource, or in other words, they can get the service. So if you are interested in the Unix program or really Windows program or system programming, you should be familiar with this system course provided by your operating system. Windows has Win API, okay, and Linux with Unix their own system code. Like this is the example of the Linux. Linux provide 200 something depending on the operating system. It's 190. The system code is a system function. So using this one, you can implement your application program. That is the system programming. Okay. Also, this is another area you can focus on as a future job after graduation. Okay, many of the students ignore the importance of the system programming or administrator job, but if you are familiar with such a system programming, so simply there's a high pay, the high salary job. Okay. So first we are going to take a look at the interface part. Interface is the first one is a command line interface. So it's usually based on the interpreter. What is an interpreter? Interpret. It's a translate, right? So your command will be translate, like the translating the language. So what is an interpreter? Convert. We have learned the similar thing before. It's a compiler, right? What is a compiler? Compiler is a program to convert high-level, human-friendly language into machine language, machine code instruction, right? What about the interpreter? Interpreter is doing the same thing, but a little bit different. What is the difference? It's a line by line interpret, line by line compile. So if you type the something, the notepad will be compiled actually. Compile does not mean changing all the source code. No, it's already, so notepad itself is a human-friendly language. Okay, so file length probably, so it will be converted into the machine code, then will be executed, something like that. So that is the interpreter. So command line interface. So usually based on such an interpreter, line by line. So if you already took the database course, so in the database course, so you can actually access the database using command line interface. It's an interpreter also. Like you can type, select from where, and enter, then data will be written. It's an interpreter. So similarly, we can use the operating system using such a command line interpreter. The example of such a command line interpreter is called a shell. So shell is not the name of the oil company. So what is this? A bullseye or target? It's an operating system. So our operating system is called layered operating system. It's one of the major types of the operating system is based on the layer, which means the most inside, this is called kernel. So somebody likes the operating system as small as possible, okay? Because the operating system itself is very complicated, too big, it's not very flexible. I want to change it a little bit, but you need to compile rebuild the entire operating system. So who knows whether this my small change affect the entire operating system. Because of that, many people like such a kernel-based operating system. If needed, you can add something other over here at the file system management, and something other on outside of this one. Then finally, the most outside of your operating system is it's like the shell, right? It's a shell. So it's a cover entire your operating system. If you pick up the shell, it's very hard. So protect the inside, right? If you go to the shoreline line, so you can find a lot of shell. So just like that, it's a shell program. So using shell program, user can access operating system. So this one is has the interpreter. But if a user types something through the shell, this shell understand, interpret such a command, then request finally it can access the computer resource through the kernel. Okay, so this is the layered approach of the operating system. Shell is the most outside the program. Okay, in other words, so if you log on the system just like the previous example, this one, come on. Oh. So this is the most outside the program. This part is the shell, and probably there might be parents of this shell, right? All the process should have the parent. So you can actually find such a So you can see I write a list of all the process. You can see the process ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and parent. Who is the parent of this one? At this time, the 0 is the sum of the operating system starts from the 0. 0 does not mean any real process, but the 1 is the init process, that is the kernel process, and so on. Then too many. So you may see that this is my process. Last command is actually more. I use the pipe. This one, this is the pipe for another communication. But don't worry, we will see it later. So I learned the two commands at the same time. So that is the 2310. 2310 is the parent of the disk. 2310 is here. That is BA shell, own shell. It's me, the interface, shell program. Okay? You can see 2308 is the parent. So 2308 is this one. It's the genome terminal. It's the process. It's a genome terminal. It's a terminal process. It actually, whenever I log in, whenever a user log in, this process actually catch whether there exists the new login or not, new user, then create a child process for shell program. Actually, this desktop is the genome terminal. It's the graphical user interface. So if this is the genome terminal. Actually, this terminal is created by, we keep track of the patterns. So what? So kernel create this? I don't think so. There might be another process in between, but that process actually give the permission of this terminal to kernel to simplify. So we will see such a process. This process is called daemon process. MON, daemon process later. So some of you guys already heard about the daemon process? No, never? Anyone who heard about the daemon process? And only one or two? It's okay. So we will learn that later. And also, similarly, we have a zombie process. You know what is a zombie? It's a ghost. It's a really ghost process. Why? Because there's no parent. Daemon is types of the zombie process, but it's different. So we will see later. So anyway, go back to the shell interface. So shell is this program as an interface. So it's a part of the operating system. What about Windows? Windows is the same thing. It's exactly same mechanism. It has a process tree like this one. So if you learn if I learn the Acrobat Pro, this is launched by my desktop program. Okay, it has the process tree. Okay, that is the interface. But different thing is, this interface is the graphical user interface, but the shell is command line interface. So this is an example of the bone shell using what? I think it's a Mac. How many of you are using the Apple MacBook? Only one? Two? So do you know who is the parents or the father of the MacBook? Steve Jobs used Linux system, Linux kernel. Actually, if you are familiar with the Linux, it's very easy to use the MacBook. More friendly and efficient. Okay. Somebody said I never used Linux, so I don't know. But I'm familiar with the MacBook because I'm a big fan of MacBook. That does make sense. If you are really the big fan of the Apple product, iOS, right? What is the current version of the iOS? 8. So definitely it's based on the Linux system. So like this one. Not much different. It's exactly the same. Okay? If you open the terminal from the MacBook, okay, so you can actually learn the same command as the one used in the Linux and the Unix system. I strongly suggest to learn the Linux environment for your future. Okay? Many of the students ignore the importance of the Unix and Linux environment, such as shell programming, shell environment. But it's true. If you get a job in outside, more than half of them, the operating system are based on the Unix or Linux system. So you should definitely. So that is the reason on Canvas I uploaded the yes, this one, this file. So actually, I scanned from the other textbook. So this is a good practice. If you already have experience on the Linux or Unix, no, it's just piece of cake. You don't have to worry about it. But if you are new the Linux or the Unix system, so why don't you practice with this the exercise line? This will not be graded. It's just for your experience. So how can I download? You can use virtual machine. So you can find a lot of the free the virtual machine. You can use any the operating system, Linux system, okay? And you can use the VM player or the virtual DOM. Virtual DOM is also the free software provided by Oracle. So then why don't you practice the Unix, the command Unix and the Linux environment? Okay. Throughout the semester, I'm going to use the Linux or Unix the interface to demonstrate the algorithm or the application program used in the operating system. So, also graphical user interface is also important part. Without the graphical user interface, it's not easy to use conveniently for a lot of application. So, I'm not going to explain detail, but if you are interested in the details of the history of the graphical user interface, you can go to the link that I provide. But that is summarized as like this one. It is started from the 1968, 69. As I said, that time is very important in the computer science history. You don't remember why? Yes, 1969, I was born. And also 68, there is a first demonstration of the such a graphical user interface. It's very small, so I'd like to enlarge it. But this is early graphical user interface. Surprisingly, it's quite similar as current one, right? So you can see the mouse. It's the same interface. You can see actually this is a mouse point. So because of that, I think there's another computer science area, the human-computer interaction. It deals with how the human being can communicate with the computer. So in the HCI, they are researching on is there any new the interface between computer and human being. This mouse or the keyboard maybe, but the mouse is not very convenient way. It's not human friendly. We never use such a things, just the speak to other or the listen. Also, we never use like the every day I feel there's something pain in tip of the index finger, right? So instead of the swiping, probably there might be better interface will be like the motion detect or gesture detection, so we can control the computer, and also there might be the advanced interface will be happen, but still such an early graphical user interface is used nowadays. The zero part is I have used the file manager interface. So actually you can, this is the source, this is the destination, so you can move, copy, or paste something like that from left to right. So this one is used for the zero part from 1980, getting close to the current graphical user interface. Mostly they are based on what? Windows. Okay, rectangle style window is still used, right? So these are this is the Windows 1.11 or not. Actually, the IBM and the Microsoft work together early stage. So this Windows 1 and also OS 2 version is kind of collaborative work between IBM and Microsoft. And you can see some of the KDEX environment or the MacBook environment. They are quite similar as the current one. And from Windows 3.1, it has been the very popular and the most the public. Okay. Also, this the macOS is the current still use the same strategy, right? Slightly change it, but mainly. So I think the interface area is another new area that you can consider for future. Right? So still, it's not drastically changed. Still, they try to keep the conventional way for interface. So this is the current OS X, the graphical user interface. Is it Tiger? I'm not sure. I'm not the user of the MacBook. I have two MacBooks. One is for my wife, and another one is for my daughter. I'm not a fan of the MacBook. I do not like any types of such a Windows-based the operating system. I still like the command line interface. So that is the reason I have used the Windows 95 until last spring. My daughter always blame me how the computer science professor used Windows 95. Nowadays, new interface, but still, it is based on the Windows style and something the icon. Okay, it's I think the screenshot from the iPad. Okay. But instead of the mouse, there's limitation, so we can use the swipe or the touch screen. But still, touch screen is not the perfect solution as an input of the small device. So what did you think about the creative way? I believe if you can search the Google for the parent or technology, the find by the Apple, there are a bunch of different ways to input the data used for smartphone. Okay? There are a lot. One of them is the gesture, and they can use the eye, or they can use something other, and also laser. Okay. Then another type on top of the such we have the system call. So system call is an API, system API that can that provide the service to access the computer resource. So mostly they are written high-level languages, C or C++. So, however, nowadays many of the students are familiar with higher level, like the C# or the .NET environment, but you better know the C language because anyway, any kind of the high-level language, they are coded by the C language or the C++. Even operating system and any the application program is I think based on C, so it's good for you to learn the C language or C++ if you are around in computer science. Okay? I know when I learned the C language the first time, half of my friend, the student, gave up when they learned the pointer. So because of pointer, so many users gave up. So that is the reason we have the object-oriented concept that doesn't require to understand the concept of the pointer. But anyway, the system call is kind of the API provided by the operating system. Using such a system call system function, you can access the computer resource. For example, the Win32 API in Windows or POSIX API or even Java can be considered as the operating system Java provides because Java use their own virtual machine. Okay, it's actually independent from the operating system. We can consider the Java virtual machine as the operating system. If we agree that, then Java API is kind of the system calls. Okay, so benefit of using such a system call and easy and simple and portability. Okay. So, for example, if you take a look at the Linux system code, okay, at the handout, so you can use, this is the list of the functions that you can use. For example, if you want to create the new process in the Linux, you can use number 2, is a fork, create a child process. Right? You can use this function to create a new process, as well as exec. Where's the exec? Where is it? 11. Yes, 11. exec. Actually, the different version of the exec, but actually, we will see is to execute the program. What is the difference between the fork and exec? So we will learn such a different kind of pair to create the process. So similarly, if we wanna mount new file system, what is a mount? If you do not know what is a mount, don't worry, we will learn later. But anyway, if I do something mount the file system, we can use the mount. The system code is in the 21, something like that. If I want to know the list of the PID or parameter process ID, we can use the function system code set the